The file had my name on it, not a copy, not a duplicate. The original, manila folder, faded label, the specific yellowed quality of paper that has been stored for 18 years in a climate-controlled archive on the third floor of a building I had walked past every single day for the last 4 years without knowing what was inside it. Mercer, Katherine A., application year, 2007. I stood in the archive room with the folder in my hands, and I thought about a Tuesday evening in April of 2007. My mother at the kitchen table, the letter in her hand. Her face arranged into the specific expression of a woman delivering news she had rehearsed. Katie, honey, it's a rejection. I had been 17 years old. I had wanted Alderton University the way some people want things that feel like destiny. Not preference, not ambition, but the specific certainty of someone who has found the place that was built for them before they arrived. My father had graduated from Alderton. My grandfather had graduated from Alderton. I had spent my childhood on that campus. The limestone buildings, the courtyard with the elm trees, the particular smell of the library that I could describe to you now, 18 years later, without closing my eyes. I had applied early decision. I had written my essay about the courtyard. I had a 4.0 GPA, a 1,540 S8, 3 varsity letters, and a letter of recommendation from a state senator who was my father's college roommate. I had been rejected. My mother had shown me the letter. I had cried for 3 days. I had gone to my second choice school. I had built a life. And now I was standing in the archive room of Alderton University's admissions office, where I had worked for the last 4 years, where I had been appointed director of admissions 7 months ago, holding a folder with my name on it. I opened it. The first page was my application. The second page was my essay. The third page was the admissions committee evaluation. Recommendation, admit. Reader 1, admit. Reader 2, admit. Committee vote, unanimous admit. Scholarship awarded. Full merit scholarship, 4 years. Renewable, I read it 3 times. Unanimous admit. Full scholarship. I had been accepted. I read the 4th page. It was a letter, dated April 14th, 2007. Dear Ms. Mercer, we are delighted to offer you admission to Alderton University's class of 2011, along with a full merit scholarship valued at... I had been accepted. With a full scholarship, 18 years ago. I had never seen this letter. My mother had shown me a different one. I stood in the archive room and I thought about my mother at the kitchen table. The letter in her hand, her face arranged. I thought about my brother Daniel, who had applied to Alderton the same year, who had been waitlisted, who had then somehow been admitted off the waitlist 2 weeks after I received my rejection, who had attended Alderton for 4 years on what my parents described as a partial scholarship, who had never, in 18 years, mentioned any of this in my presence. I held the folder. I thought about 18 years, about the second choice school, about the loans I had taken because my second choice school had not offered me a scholarship, about the specific shape of a life built around a detour that was not a detour. That was a theft. I put the folder on the desk. I sat down. I had work to do. My name is Katherine Mercer. I am 35 years old. I am the director of admissions at Audited University in Hartford, Connecticut. I have worked in this office for 4 years. I was appointed director 7 months ago. The first major project I initiated in my new role was an archive digitization effort, converting 18 years of paper admission files to a searchable digital system, because the paper archive was a liability and a resource, and I wanted it accessible. The project required reviewing every file. I had not expected to find my own. I had not expected, when I found it, to find what was inside it. I had not expected at 35 to understand for the first time why my life had taken the shape it took. But I understand now. And what I'm about to tell you is not a story about a rejection. It is a story about what my mother did with an acceptance letter, and what she did with my brother's waitlist, and what 18 years of a stolen scholarship looks like when you finally hold the original in your hands. I need to tell you about my family, not to explain them. I am not interested in explaining people who made the choices they made, but to give you the full picture of the architecture. Because what my mother built required a specific structure to hold it, and understanding the structure requires understanding the materials. You know, my parents, Robert and Nancy Mercer, had been Alderton people for 2 generations. My grandfather, Edward Mercer, had graduated in 1959. He had been, by all accounts, and by his own frequent recounting, transformed by his 4 years there. A first-generation college student from a small town in western Connecticut who arrived uncertain and left certain, who credited the university with everything that came after. He became a successful architect. He donated to Alderton every year until he died. He talked about it the way people talk about the place where they became themselves. My father had followed him there in 1981. Robert Mercer had been a legacy admit, a fact he acknowledged with the specific mixture of honesty and deflection of a man who knows the admission was assisted but believes he would have gotten in anyway. He had studied economics. He had met my mother, Nancy Walsh, at a mixer in his junior year. She had been studying literature. They had graduated together in 1985. They had married in 1987. They had, in the way of Alderton people who marry other Alderton people, raised their children inside the specific culture of a family for whom one university represented belonging, achievement, identity, and continuity. Daniel was born in 1987. I was born in 1989. From the time I was old enough to understand what a university was, I understood that Alderton was the one, not as pressure. My parents were not the kind of people who applied pressure overtly, as assumption, as the invisible background architecture of our family's self-understanding. We were Alderton people. Daniel and I would go to Alderton. That was simply the shape of things. Daniel is my older brother by 2 years. I want to be careful about how I describe him, because I am aware that I am not a neutral narrator when it comes to my brother, and I want to give you the accurate picture rather than the one shaped by what I eventually found. Daniel is the kind of person who moves through rooms as if he belongs in them, charming in the specific way that reads as confidence rather than performance, good at being liked, not cruel. I want to say that clearly. Not a villain in the theatrical sense. But Daniel had always been the one my parents worried about, not publicly, in the specific private register of a family's internal dynamics that children absorb without being told. Daniel was social where I was studious. Daniel was inconsistent where I was reliable. Daniel had the grades and the test scores of someone who was smart enough to coast and had made that choice. A B+ student at a school where the transcript context mattered enormously. I had the grades and test scores of someone who had decided early to be exceptional. Not to compete with Daniel. I want to be honest about this. I had decided to be exceptional because I loved learning the way some people love movement as the natural expression of what I was built for. I studied because it felt like breathing. I applied to Alderton early decision because it was the only place I had ever wanted to be. And I was, by every metric that Alderton used to evaluate applicants, a significantly stronger candidate than my brother. My parents knew this. My mother, in particular, knew this. She had helped me prepare my application. She had read my essay. She had said when she finished, "Katie, this is extraordinary." She had said it in the voice of someone who meant it. She had said it in October of 2006, 6 months before she showed me the letter. April 14th, 2007. A Sunday? I know it was a Sunday because I had a track meet that morning and I came home to find my mother at the kitchen table with an envelope in front of her. She looked up when I came in. Her face was wrong, not catastrophically, not just slightly off the specific micro expression of someone who has been sitting with a piece of information and has arranged themselves around it before the other person arrives. "Honey," she said, "sit down." I looked at the envelope. "Alderton University, Office of Admissions." My heart was in my throat. "It came today," she said. She slid it across the table. I looked at her face. Then I looked at the envelope. It had been opened, not carefully. The tear was ragged, the specific ragged tear of someone who opened it quickly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I knew you'd want to know right away, and I couldn't wait." I pulled out the letter. I read it. "Dear Ms. Mercer, we regret to inform you that after careful consideration, the admissions committee is unable to offer you a place in the class of 2011. The room was very quiet. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," my mother said. I read the letter again. I looked for what I had heard about rejection letters, the specific language, the suggestions about reapplying, the encouragement. The letter had all of those things. It looked exactly like a rejection letter should look, because she had written it to look exactly like that. I did not know that for 18 years. I set the letter down. I did not cry in the kitchen. I held it until my room, because I was 17 and had been raised to hold things until I was alone. When I was alone, I cried for a long time. I cried the specific grief of a door closing. I did not know the door had never closed. I did not know the door had been locked from the outside by my mother with a fabricated letter and a plan she had already set in motion. What my mother had done. The actual acceptance letter had arrived that morning. She had opened it. She had read it. She had made her decision in the time between reading the letter and hearing my key in the door. She had written a rejection. On plain paper, right? Not Alderton letterhead. I had been too destroyed in the moment to look closely. She had showed me her version. She had put the original in an envelope. She had addressed it to Alderton University's admissions office. Not to send back. She had mailed it to the family post office box that Daniel managed, a box she had opened in his name the previous year for reasons she had explained to my father as organizational convenience. She kept the original. She showed me the copy. She watched me cry. She said, "Your father and I are so proud of you regardless." 3 weeks later, Daniel received his waitlist notification from Alderton. My mother called the admissions office. She spoke with the associate director. She mentioned my grandfather's name. She mentioned my father's name. She mentioned the Mercer Family Scholarship Endowment of Fontes, a modest fund my grandfather had established in 1978, valued at approximately $200,000, that awarded a small annual scholarship to one Alderton student. She mentioned that the family was deeply committed to Alderton's future and was considering a significant additional contribution. She did not promise a donation. She simply mentioned it. The implication was precise and deliberate. 2 weeks later, Daniel was admitted off the wait list. My mother told my father that Daniel had been admitted on his own merits. My father believed her. Daniel, and this is the part I have spent the most time with, the part I return to most often, Daniel knew. He did not know the full extent, but he knew he had been waitlisted. He knew he had then been admitted. He knew I had received a rejection the same week. He had never in 18 years asked why. He had never in 18 years said anything. He had accepted his admission. He had attended for 4 years. He had graduated. He had been at every family gathering for 18 years, the Alderton graduate. The one who carried the legacy forward. The one my grandfather had been so proud of in the 2 years before he died. He had let me believe the door had closed, because the alternative required him to ask questions he did not want answered. I need to tell you what 18 years looks like when they are built on a detour that was not a detour. I attended the University of Connecticut. UConn is a good school. I want to say that clearly because what I am about to tell you is not about UConn. It is not a lesser institution. It did not produce a lesser education, and the people I met there and the things I learned there were real and valuable and mine. But I had not chosen UConn. I had chosen Alderton. And there is a specific experience of spending 4 years at a school you chose second, knowing it was second, carrying the weight of the first choice that did not work out. There is a specific quality to that experience that is hard to describe to someone who hasn't lived it. Not tragedy, not even unhappiness exactly. Just the particular awareness of an alternative that didn't happen, running quietly underneath everything, surfacing at specific moments. The Alderton sweatshirt on a stranger on the street, the alumni events my father and Daniel attended without me, the specific expression on my grandfather's face the first time Daniel brought him back a pennant. I built my life at UConn. I graduated with honors. Oh, I took out $52,000 in student loans. Loans that a full scholarship to Alderton would have meant I never owed. I went to graduate school. Well, I got a master's degree in higher education administration. I spent 4 years working in admissions at a small liberal arts college in Vermont. I applied to Alderton's admissions office in 2021. I got the job. I walked onto the campus for the first time as an employee, and I stood in the courtyard with the elm trees, and I thought, I'm here. It took a different path, but I'm here. I did not know in that moment that I had always been meant to be here, that I had been accepted 18 years earlier, that I was walking onto a campus that had wanted me before I knew how to want it back. I need to tell you about one specific Thanksgiving, 2019. My grandfather was alive, barely, in the specific barely of a 90-year-old man whose body has done its best work and is resting. He sat at the head of the table. He was, in the way of people who are near the end of things, interested in speaking about what mattered. He looked down the table. He looked at Daniel. I am so glad, he said, that the Alderton tradition continued. Daniel, your grandmother and I, we are so proud. Daniel smiled. He said, thank you, Grandpa. He did not look at me. I smiled. I said nothing. I was 30 years old, and I smiled and I said nothing because I did not know there was anything to say. My grandfather died 4 months later. He died believing Daniel had carried the legacy. He died not knowing his granddaughter had been accepted, full scholarship, unanimous admit, and never told. I think about that Thanksgiving more than I think about almost anything. My mother, in the 18 years between the kitchen table and the archive room, was consistent. That is the word I keep returning to. Consistent. She never mentioned Alderton in a way that reopened the question. She never said anything that might have led me to look. She had, with the specific thoroughness of someone who understands that a lie requires maintenance, constructed a reality that held. She told me once when I got the job at Alderton's admissions office that she was so happy I had found my way there. It's where you always belonged, she said. She said it warmly. She meant it. She had known for 14 years at that point that she was the reason I hadn't been there earlier. She said it's where you always belong to my face. And she meant it. And she had hidden the letter for 14 years. I have thought about this a great deal. I have not arrived at a framework that makes it comprehensible. I have only arrived at the facts. The digitization project began in September. My decision, my initiative, my first major project as director of admissions. The rationale was straightforward. 18 years of paper files were a preservation liability. Important documents were deteriorating. The archive needed to be converted to a searchable digital format for institutional continuity. I had not thought about my own application. I want to be precise about this. I had not undertaken the digitization project in order to find my own file. The thought had not occurred to me. My application to Alderton was a closed chapter of my past. I had moved forward. I was the director of admissions. I was in a particular way exactly where I had always wanted to be. I had not thought there was anything to find. My assistant, a young man named Marcus, who was in his second year of an administrative role before graduate school, brought me the Mercer files on a Tuesday afternoon. These are flagged for your review, he said. Same last name. Thought you might want to check them before they go into the system. He set 3 folders on my desk. My grandfather's alumni file. My father's alumni file. A third folder. Mercer, Katherine A. Application year, 2007. Marcus left. I looked at the folder. I thought, this will be the rejection letter. Closure, maybe. Interesting to see the official record. I opened it. I read the committee evaluation, unanimous admit, full merit scholarship. I read it 3 times. Then I read the acceptance letter. Then I sat very still for approximately 7 minutes. Then I began to work. I need to describe what I did over the next 6 hours, because the doing of it was the only thing that kept me functional, and because the results of the doing are what made everything that came after possible. I pulled Daniel's file. Mercer, Daniel, our application year, 2005. He had applied 2 years before me. He had been waitlisted. His file included a notation from the associate director at the time, a woman named Helen Park, who had since retired, dated May 2nd, 2007, received call from applicant's mother, Nancy Mercer. Legacy family. Mercer endowment. Mother indicated family considering additional contribution. Recommending admission from waitlist, pending committee confirmation. May 2nd, 2007. 3 weeks after the kitchen table. 3 weeks after my mother had showed me her letter. I sat with that timeline. She had called the same week. She had made her move the same week she had locked my door. She had exchanged my admission for his. Not directly. Alderton hadn't known. They had simply received a call from a legacy family with money. But in her calculation, she had used my scholarship offer as leverage to secure his admission. She had traded my full scholarship for his waitlist pull. I photographed everything. Every page. Every notation. Well, I sent the photographs to my personal email. I logged the originals back into the archive system. I sat at my desk. I thought about who I needed to call. I called my best friend Rachel first, not my attorney, Rachel, because I had just found out that my mother had stolen my acceptance to the university, where I was now the director of admissions, and I needed to say it out loud to someone who loved me before I said it out loud to anyone who was going to help me do something about it. Rachel picked up on the second ring. I said, I need to tell you something. I told her. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Katherine. Yes, I said. You're the director of admissions at Alderton, she said. Yes, I said. And you just found out your mother stole your acceptance letter when you were 17. Yes, I said. Another long pause. What are you going to do? She said. I looked at the photograph of the committee evaluation on my phone. Unanimous admit. I'm going to find out exactly what happened, I said. All of it, and then I'm going to decide. The full picture took 2 weeks. I want to tell you everything I found because each piece is a specific choice my mother made on a specific day, and I want you to understand the full architecture. The acceptance letter. The original full acceptance letter dated April 14th, 2007, offering me admission to the class of 2011 with a full merit scholarship valued at $212,000 over 4 years. My mother had received it. She had kept it. I found it. Not in the Alderton archive, in a different place, which I will get to. The fabricated rejection. My mother had typed a rejection letter on plain paper, not Alderton letterhead. I had been 17 and destroyed, and I had not looked closely. She had counted on that. She had been right. The phone call, documented in Daniel's file. May 2nd, 2007, 3 weeks after the kitchen table. My mother calling the admissions office, leveraging the Mercer name and the implication of a donation. Daniel admitted from the wait list 2 weeks later. The scholarship. Daniel had attended Alderton on what my parents described to both of us as a partial scholarship. I found the actual scholarship documentation in Daniel's file. He had received a merit scholarship of $40,000 over 4 years. The remaining $172,000 had been paid by my parents. My parents, who had told me they couldn't contribute significantly to my education because of financial constraints. My parents, who had watched me take out $52,000 in loans. My parents, who had been paying $43,000 a year for Daniel's Alderton education while telling me the finances were tight. The letter I found at home. This is the part I had not planned for. 3 weeks into my research, I drove to my parents' house while my mother was at her book club. My father was home. He let me in without suspicion. I visited regularly. My presence was normal. I went to my mother's study. I knew in the specific way that you know things about your parents' organizational systems after 35 years, where she kept important documents. The fireproof box in the closet. I opened it. Inside the original acceptance letter. She had kept it for 18 years. In a fireproof box, as if it were something precious. As if it were something that needed to be preserved. I stood in her closet with the letter in my hands. I thought about that for a long time. I photographed it. I put it back. I went home. And there is something I need to tell you about my father. My father did not know. I want to say that clearly because it matters and because I have been asked. My father, Robert Mercer, did not know what my mother had done. He had believed for 18 years that I had been rejected. He had been told for 18 years that Daniel had been admitted off the waitlist on his own merits. He had been told for 18 years that the family finances were such that they could support Daniel's partial scholarship, but could not significantly contribute to my education. He had not known about the phone call. He had not known about the fireproof box. He had not known. I know this because I asked him directly, and because I have spent 6 years in admissions learning to distinguish between people who are managing information and people who genuinely don't have it. My father genuinely didn't have it. He was the only person in my immediate family about whom that was true. I called Daniel before I called my mother. This was a deliberate choice. I needed to understand what he knew. The difference between a brother who had benefited from something without understanding its full cost and a brother who had known and chosen silence, that difference mattered. Not because it changed what had been done, but because it changed who I was talking to. I called him on a Thursday evening. He answered with the specific warmth of someone who has no idea what is coming. Katie, hey, what's up? I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to answer me honestly. A pause. Okay, he said. When you were admitted to Alderton, I said. From the wait list? Did you know why? A longer pause. What do you mean? He said. Did Mom tell you she called the admissions office? I said. Silence. Daniel, I said. She said she made some calls, he said. She said she talked to someone there. I thought, I thought I didn't ask a lot of questions. Did you know I had been accepted? I said. You were rejected, he said. Mom showed us Did you know I had been accepted? I said again. Before she showed you the rejection. A long silence. The specific silence of someone who has known something in the almost knowing way for 18 years and is now being asked to know it completely. I heard them talking, he said finally. Mom and Dad, I said. Mom and I don't know who. On the phone. The week the letters came. He stopped. She was talking about Alderton, about an acceptance. I thought she was talking about me. She wasn't, I said. Oh, Katie, you thought she was talking about you, I said, and you didn't ask. I was 18, he said. I had just been waitlisted. You heard her talking about an acceptance from Alderton, I said. The same week I received my rejection, and you didn't ask. The line was quiet. No, he said. I didn't ask. For 18 years, I said. I didn't. He stopped. I told myself I must have misunderstood, or that she was talking about someone else. She was talking about me, I said. I know, he said. You've known, I said. Not a question. He didn't answer, which was its own answer. In all, I am not going to tell you that I forgave Daniel easily. I am not going to construct a version of this story where the brother who heard and didn't ask becomes sympathetic through the logic of being 18 and wanting something. He was 18 and he wanted it. He was 37 and he had never said a word. Those are two different things. What I will tell you is that Daniel, in the days after that phone call, did something that I had not expected and that changed. Not what had happened, but something about what came next. He called my mother. He called her before I did. He told her he knew. He told her I knew. He told her she needed to call me. He said this to the woman who had built his Alderton admission on the foundation of my stolen scholarship. He said it anyway. I did not expect that. I am still not sure what to do with it. She called me on a Saturday morning, early, before I would normally be awake, which told me she had not slept. I answered. Katherine, she said. Mom, I said. A silence. I know you found it, she said. Yes, I said. And I know Daniel talked to you. Yes. Another silence. I want to explain, she started. Mom, I said, before you explain, I need to tell you something first. She stopped. I have the original letter, I said, from the Alderton archive, the committee evaluation, the acceptance, the scholarship offer. I have the notation in Daniel's file from Helen Park documenting your phone call. I have the financial records showing what Daniel's education costs versus what you told me you could contribute to mine. I have the letter from your Fireproof box. A very long silence. You went through I photographed it. I said, I put it back. She didn't say anything. I have everything, I said. I'm not telling you this as a threat. I'm telling you so that the conversation we're about to have is about what actually happened, not about what version you decide to tell me. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was different. The specific difference of someone who has set down the managed version. I was afraid, she said. I waited. Daniel was, you know how he was. He needed Alderton. The legacy, the connections, he needed something to anchor him. You would have been fine anywhere. You were always going to be fine anywhere. I had a full scholarship, I said. I know, she said. 4 years. $212,000. I know, Katherine. I took out $52,000 in loans, I said. You watched me take out loans! She didn't say anything. You kept the letter, I said. For 18 years. In a fireproof box. I know, she said. Why, I said. The longest silence. Because I couldn't throw it away, she said. I sat with that. I thought about a woman keeping an acceptance letter in a fireproof box for 18 years. Preserving it. Protecting it from fire. Carrying the proof of what she had done alongside the original document. Not destroying it, keeping it. I have theories about why. I don't think any of them fully explain it. I am so sorry, Katherine, she said. I know that. I know there is nothing I can say that... What did you think would happen? I said. Did you think I would never find out? I thought... She stopped. I thought eventually it wouldn't matter. I thought you would build your life and it would become the past. And it wouldn't... I am the director of admissions at Alderton, I said. A silence. Yes, she said. I found my own file, I said. while digitizing the archive, my first major project in my new role. She didn't say anything. Did you know I had applied for this job? I said. Yes, she said. Did you think about this possibility? I said. Another long silence. I thought about it, she said. And I said, yeah, and I thought, she said slowly, that it would be okay, that maybe you finding your way there was, that maybe it was a kind of resolution, I said. Yes, she said. I looked at the window. I thought about the courtyard, the elm trees, the library smell. I thought about my grandfather at Thanksgiving. The Alderton tradition continued. Mom, I said, I need you to understand what you took. Not the scholarship. I know the number. I've known it for weeks. Not the 4 years. What you took was the story I told myself about my own life. For 18 years, I had a story about a door that closed, about not being good enough, about building something anyway. That story was built on a lie you told me when I was 17, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I believed everything you said. She was crying. I could hear it. I know, she said. The story was mine, I said. The failure was mine, and it wasn't even real. I'm sorry, she said. I know, I said. Is there, she started. I don't know yet, I said. Okay, she said. I need time, I said. Okay, she said. I hung up. I sat in my apartment. Outside the window, it was early morning, and the city was beginning to move. I thought about a 17-year-old girl crying in her room, about $52,000 in loans, about Daniel at the head table at graduation, my parents in the audience, about a fireproof box, about the letter inside it, preserved for 18 years, by a woman who couldn't throw it away. I am going to tell you what I did. Not what I wanted to do, though I will tell you that too, because I think the wanting matters, and I think pretending it didn't exist would be a different kind of dishonesty than the one I am trying to correct. What I wanted to do in the first days after the archive room was to make the full story known, to tell everyone, to let the truth do its particular irreversible work, to call every relative who had watched Daniel graduate from Alderton while I took out student loans, to let my grandfather's memory know somehow what had been done in his name. I wanted that. I did not do all of it. But what I did, I met with Daniel in person. He drove to Hartford. We sat in a coffee shop for 3 hours. He told me everything he knew. Yeah, the full account, not the managed version. He had heard more than he had told me on the phone. He had understood more than he had admitted. He had made the specific choice of a young man who had wanted something badly enough to not ask questions. He had made that choice for 18 years. He was 37 and he had never said a word. In the coffee shop, he said, I want to fix this. You can't fix it? I said. I know, he said. I want to try. What does trying look like to you? I said. He was quiet. The loans, he said. The $52,000. I want to pay them. I looked at him. Yeah, they're already paid, I said. I paid them years ago. And then the amount, he said. Whatever it was, plus interest. I want to give it to you. Daniel, it's the only thing I can actually do, he said. I can't give you the 4 years. I can't give you what Grandpa said at Thanksgiving. I can't give you the story. He looked at the table. But I can give you the money. I sat with that. Okay, I said. He transferred the money 3 days later. $67,000. The original loans plus what he had calculated as the interest and opportunity cost. I donated it to the Alderton Financial Aid Fund in my grandfather's name, not my parents' name. My grandfather's, the man who had meant for the legacy to be about belonging, not about transactions. Why? I told my father, not on the phone, in person, at their house, on a Sunday afternoon when my mother was there too. My father listened. He listened the way my father always listened, completely, without interrupting, in the way of a man who believes that the full account deserves to be heard before the response is given. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. He looked at my mother. She was looking at her hands. Nancy, he said. She didn't look up. Look at me, he said. She looked at him. They looked at each other for a long moment, in the way of two people who have been married for decades and are discovering in the middle of those decades that one of them had a room the other never knew about. I need to understand why, he said. Not to me. To her. What she told him, I don't know completely. They asked me to give them privacy, And I went and sat on the back porch and listened to the birds and thought about my grandfather. And when my father came out 40 minutes later, his face looked like someone who had put something down that they had been carrying without knowing it. I am so sorry, Katherine, he said. I know, Dad, I said. I know, I said. He sat next to me on the porch. We didn't talk for a while. Are you okay? He said finally. I thought about that. I thought about the archive room, about the committee evaluation, unanimous admit, about the courtyard with the elm trees where I walked every day, about the specific feeling of standing in a place you were always meant to be, understanding for the first time that the route was longer than it needed to be. I'm getting there, I said. He put his hand on mine. We sat on the porch. It was a Sunday afternoon. The light was good. Then not. I am the director of admissions at Alderton University. I have been in this role for 7 months. Every week, I read applications from students who want to be here the way I wanted to be here when I was 17, with the specific certainty of someone who has found the place they were built for. I take that seriously. I take it more seriously than I would have if I had arrived at 17. Not because the detour made me better. I refuse to construct that narrative. The detour was a theft. It was not a gift. But I am here now. I have been here. I walk through the courtyard with the elm trees every morning. I know every file in the archive. I know what an acceptance looks like. I know what someone stole from a 17-year-old girl in a kitchen on a Sunday afternoon in April, and I know what it looks like when a door that was locked from the outside finally opens. Yeah. I have not published this story with my full name. Not because I am ashamed. I am not the one who should be ashamed. But because there are people in this story who are my family, and I have not finished deciding what I want the rest of that to look like. And I do not want the decision made for me by a comment section. What I can tell you, my mother and I are in therapy together, not because I have forgiven her. I haven't, not fully, not yet, but because I am the director of admissions at Alderton University, and she is my mother, and the rest of our lives are still in front of us. And I am not willing to let what she did in 2007 define everything that comes after. That is my choice. I made it. Nobody stole it. Well, there is a courtyard at Alderton. Elm trees, 4 of them, planted in 1923 by the founding class. A stone bench that faces east, so the morning light falls across it. I sit there sometimes, not every day. I am the director of admissions, and I have a full calendar and a team that depends on me, and a digitization project that is still ongoing. But sometimes, in the early morning before the building fills, I sit on the bench that faces east. I think about a 17-year-old girl writing an essay about this courtyard, about what she felt when she described it, about the specific love of a place that feels like it was built for you. She was not wrong about that feeling. She was 17, and she wrote about a courtyard, and she was completely right. It was built for her. She just took a longer way to get here. She's here now. That has to be enough. It is enough. It will always have been enough. Before I let you go, has anyone ever made a decision for you about your education, your future, your path, that you only understood years later? Have you ever found out that a door you believed had closed was actually locked from the outside? Have you ever built a life around a story that turned out to be constructed by someone who needed you not to know the truth? Tell me in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Because I spent 18 years believing I had failed a test I had actually passed. And I am telling this story because I think more people are living inside someone else's version of their life than know it. You deserve to know the truth about your own file. Subscribe for new stories every week. Next week, a woman discovers her identical twin sister has been living her identity, her name, her apartment, her job, for 2 years while everyone believed she was the one who hadn't survived the accident. My name is Katherine. I am 35 years old. I am the director of admissions at the university that accepted me 18 years ago. Every morning, I walk through a courtyard I wrote about when I was 17. I was right about it. I was always right about it. I just didn't know until 7 months ago that I had been right about everything. And the committee voted unanimously. Full scholarship. Class of 2011. Admit, I was always admitted. I just had to find my own file.